A big hot word right now is obesogen. And what an obesogen is it's a kind of a made-up word because it means what makes you fat. Obeso, fat, generates. And we are starting to look at things in the environment that are not just calories. So people know like cookies make you fat, and eating all the time makes you fat. Gluttony makes you fat. But can another kind of substance make you fat? And they do, and the way that they do this is they disrupt your hormonal regulation within your body and create a circumstance. For example, an obesogen might put you into fat storage mode, or even more likely, it gets you stuck in fat storage mode by mimicking the action of hormones or by blocking the turn-off mechanism of hormones. It's really not important to understand exactly what or how these obesogens, we're studying those in a lab. The important thing to do is to understand that there are factors in our environment that are in addition to just what we eat in terms of food that can have an effect on our weight because they affect our hormones. Now, we've talked a lot about how certain foods that we eat affect our hormones. For example, when you eat carbohydrates, that's going to stimulate insulin. And if you eat carbohydrates all the time and you're carbohydrate sensitive by nature, then you're going to have a situation where you're in insulin dominance all the time, and eventually it's very likely you're going to become insulin resistant. And when you're insulin resistant, it's really easy to put on fat, and it's very hard to release it to be burned. So that would be being in fat accumulation or fat storage mode. One of the things that we know about fat is sex hormones also have a very strong effect on whether we are storing and how we distribute fat on our body. This is something that happens to everyone at puberty. That's when sex hormones start to elevate. And a lot of the things that we're seeing from the environment mimic the effect of sex hormones, particularly feminizing sex hormones. So those are breaking up with our normal natural balance, and they're promoting fatness. And this makes sense that that would be present in our environment because a lot of the food that we're eating comes from livestock that it's promoting feminizing, fattening characteristics. For example, there's hormones to make animals grow bigger and fatter faster and have a bigger breast, for example, in a chicken. Although the hormones go up and down about whether you're allowed to give those to chickens. This is just an example. We have these hormones that we use to manipulate the livestock. We have hormones that we give to cattle, so they make a lot more milk than they would normally. These hormones that we feed to animals in their feed disrupt their hormonal system so that they can provide more meat product or more dairy product or more eggs for us. But when we eat those products, we're also consuming some of those hormones that have, or the residues of them, that affect our bodies in ways that we really don't understand. Now, we've seen sometimes in the future where there have been situations where we knew exactly what the hormones were and they affected people. But we tend to see that there's a problem with this, study it for a really long time. Of course, the agriculture people who are involved in their livelihood is from agriculture, they're going to resist this because it can cause them to go out of business, cost them a lot of money, and really they don't necessarily believe this is true because all the time there's all kinds of complaints. Some of them are true, some of them aren't. So it only is obvious when you look at it through the retrospectoscope from far in the future and you look back. So we're devoting a lot of effort towards blocking these through government action. And it just takes too long, and they're really not looking out for you. And there's a lot of bureaucracy, and there's probably a lot of money passing hands back and forth. Within that system, there's a lot of people who are trying to do good, and it just takes too long. You can't expect someone else to look out for your health and wellness and your fatness better than you do yourself. We only can handle these in very simplistic solutions that are down the road, and they oftentimes turn out not to be what the problem was anyway. So somebody protests it, and we actually can look back and see it got us into a lot of trouble. For example, eggs and cholesterol. So that was really demonized. A lot of natural, wholesome foods that come from nature, those were demonized because they were thought to be unhealthy, but it really turned out to have just been an economic situation in the first place. But we've embraced these wholeheartedly. So if you want to stay up on what kind of things can be causing problems from the environment that are environmental obesogens, it's just one of those things that you'll have to stay up on. That information is there, and unless you are generally well educated enough, you can't take into consideration information and process it with what you already know. If you just look for someone to tell you yes or no, you're going to end up going back and forth and all over the place. And then what we usually respond as human beings is just to say, this is all too complicated, it's just too much trouble, and ignore everything altogether. And that isn't the best strategy. So we need to start to understand what an obesogen is, meaning how does it act on us, how could it disrupt our hormones. And the first thing we need to understand is that there is such a thing. And when your mind starts to grasp that possibility, that there's other things besides calories in and calories out or calories burned, then you can start to put these into a much bigger picture. And that's going to be a lot more helpful at getting you out of fat storage mode.